الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. Continuing on from our previous session, this being the second weekend of our workshop on lesson plan Islamization. In the previous session or previous weekend, we covered the concept of Islamization from the roots of knowledge, understanding knowledge, theory, Islamization of knowledge and Islamization of education, the Islamic approach to knowledge in general and in specific. And we went through the different stages that efforts evolved through in the process of trying to Islamize schooling. And after talking about producing textbooks and focus being primarily on Islamic studies, and we then spoke about the importance, of Islamizing the other subjects, which is the biggest challenge. And we came to the point where the most basic area from which Islamization could take place in a relatively short space of time was from the point of the lesson plans themselves. The lesson plans being, as they say, where the rubber hits the road. It's the point at which Islamization will be realized, if the lesson plans are realized, and won't be realized if they're not Islamized. So it's not to say that some elements of Islamization or giving the material and Islamic flavor cannot happen without the lesson plan Islamization. But lesson plan Islamization, we said, was the most basic and consistent way to establish the Islamization of the subject itself. Regardless of the book that you have, you can take any book and tackle it utilizing the 5 principles which I outlined. We began to look at the first 3 in the previous session, and we will just quickly run over them and go on to the last 2, and then we will be looking at different examples of Islamization. And this is where also we'd like to get some feedback from you on this aspect, the actual attempt to Islamize various lesson plans. Now, the principles of lesson plan Islamization, which we looked at, and this was in our 3rd session, we said were 5, and these 5 which could turn daily lesson plans from kindergarten to grade 12 into Islamically guided plans, which as a result would produce an Islamically oriented class session. And if those plans, if those principles are in place, and this has been done consistently, then whoever takes over, whoever is the next person who takes the class, if the teacher is absent or something like that, we know that they can continue to do what the previous teacher had done. Now, what we're going to look at now are the actual principles. We did start them last week already. Look at the first principle, which is the classroom environment. As you can see in the picture there, the walls of the classroom are the most direct mode by which an environment can be created. Those pictures, as they say, a single picture speaks 1,000 words. So we know that this is a critical point at which Islamization needs to take place, so that what the children see in the classroom reminds them of their culture, their traditions, Islam. So the pictures that are on the wall, we might think them, you know, we have pictures of the human body, we have various pictures that we put up on the wall, numbers, etc. But every picture, with the help of the art teacher, if you're not that creative, every picture can send a message to the children. So it is very important that we try to put as many clear images which reinforce, you know, according to the level of the knowledge of the children. Writing Arabic texts which the children can't read, they don't understand, there's no point. This is not what we, you know, from an adult perspective, we might say, oh, that's very Islamic. You have Ayatul Kursi and you have, you know, Surah Yasin or whatever, and they say, well, it's very Islamic. Well, no, it's not Islamic for those children because they can't read Ayatul Kursi, they can't read Surah Yasin, they're too young. So, and even just the surah written in Arabic, you know, they at this age, especially the young kids, I mean, images, pictures have a much greater effect. So in this first principle, you also have the oral environment. You know, what do you say when you get into the classroom? Do you say hi and everybody says hi? Hello? Good morning? You know, these are the phrases which are neutral phrases, right? They're Western phrases. Or do we come into the classroom with Salaam Alaikum? So that's the way to go. It begins with Salaam Alaikum. And you let the kids know what Salaam Alaikum means. Allahu Akbar, you know, when something happens, Subhanallah, if something amazing happens, you use these phrases. Somebody sneezes, Alhamdulillah, you teach them, Yarhamukallah. Also, besides the oral, you know, what's being said in the classroom, of course, you're going to be controlling the language. If kids have bad language, you correct it, etc. You know, to keep it clean from any, you know, corruption from that perspective. But you're trying to introduce as many other Islamic words into the course of your presentation and into the minds of the children. On a physical plane, we favor the right. We know Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, whenever he was doing anything, he would favor his right, the right hand. Put on his shoes, right foot first. If he's putting on his coat, he put on the right side first. his qamis or whatever. So we teach them this favoring of the right, giving with the right, receiving with the right, drinking with the right. All of this represents part of the environment of the classroom that from a physical level, we teach them and we focus on this issue where we can do it physically. If two students come to the door together, the one on the right should go ahead. The one on the left, lets the one on the right go ahead. These are Muslim traditions based on the prophetic practice of favoring the right. So the whole objective is to create an Islamic cultural atmosphere in the classroom. And in terms of our resources, I mentioned here that we take benefit from our art teachers. Hopefully the art teacher is Islamically inclined and has a good handle on Islamic art and things related to it. And you can always pick up things from Sheikh Google. The second principle is the brief mention of Muslim personality relevant to one of the topics of the class. Or it could be historical relevance, connecting the children with the past. That Islam produced great individuals who contributed to world civilization. We're not an isolated civilization or country or people, who have no past. We might be weak today, but in the past we were strong. It's part of history. And the students should know. They will graduate knowing Newton and Einstein and others. They should know the big names in Islamic history in terms of personalities and contributions to world civilization. For example, Hassan ibn al-Haytham, he used to be called al-Hazan, from Hassan, al-Hassan. He was a major scholar in terms of scientists who produced material concerning vision, optics, and light. So he had the prism and how light broke up. He also looked at the images that were produced in the eye, and he developed his own camera, which was like a house in which images could pass through a pinhole. He described it, they call it a camera obscura. He did that. He created it from the 10th century. So they should know who Al-Hassan ibn al-Haytham is. And this is for classes. Of course, you're going to take a class in optics. You're going to take a class in light as they study science. So he is the person who pops up at that point. The objective basically is to connect students with their cultural past and to let them realize that Muslims contributed in all fields of learning. With the book 101 Inventions, you can see images of it. It's available for download on kalamullah.com. Books of Muslim heroes can be found also at amana.org, because it's not necessarily a personality who is a scientist. It could be people of other note. The third principle, which we looked at in our third session in the previous weekend, is the relevant Quranic verse. For example, for a class on water, dealing with water, we have from Surah Ar-Rahman, 55th chapter, verses 19 to 21, He released the two seas so meet, with a barrier between them which neither can cross. And we can show them an image like the one you can see currently on the screen, where two water bodies have met, and you can see the barrier in between them. And also, on a class on the human body, the fact that everyone has different fingerprints, we can mention Surah Al-Qiyamah, verses 3 and 4. Does man think that we shall not assemble his bones? Yes, we're able even to proportion his fingertips. Allah is the one who made each fingertip different, each fingerprint different from everybody else's. No matter how many people there are in the world, no two fingerprints are the same. So that's using the Quranic verses. We said, bring the Arabic and give the English translation or whatever other language is being used in the class. And of course, we stress that it's important to take a verse which is relevant to the subject matter of the class. Not just to take a verse from anywhere in the Quran and because it sounded nice, or we had a nice recording of some recitation, which sounds beautiful, so we play that. So it becomes, a kind of musical entertainment. No. And this is a rut which many Muslim communities have gotten into. Whenever we start our sessions, we have somebody recite Quran. Basically, this is for barakah. Most people don't understand what's being recited. The person who's reciting it is just taken someplace from anywhere in the Quran. 99% of the time it has no relevance at all to the occasion. And beyond that, the translation is not given, so the people don't even know what the verse actually says. So the whole issue of the message of the Quran, reflection on the Quran, is lost totally. So the objective, we said, basically was so that students would feel that the Quran has something to say about everything. The Quran has something to say about everything. It's relevant. It's not an ancient book, from 1,400 years ago, which doesn't really connect with today. We're in modern times now. What that book spoke about couldn't possibly be relevant, that's what people say, but of course it's not true at all. The Quran is relevant and will remain relevant until the last day of this world. The resources, there's the English Concordance of the Quran. You can go and look it up on Google. It's published in India, Pakistan. An English version of an Arabic text called Al-Mu'jam Al-Mufahras li Al-Fadh Al-Quran, where it's in Arabic, the Mu'jam. You can put any word in Arabic and it will tell you where that word occurs in the Quran, words similar to it, words with the same root, whatever, verbs, etc., all connected. Nouns, adjectives, etc., that has this word as a root. So they made an English version of it, which is not as extensive and comprehensive as the Arabic, but at least it does cover a lot. So it's worth getting the English Concordance of the Quran, have a copy of it, or copies of it in the school library. And then, of course, there's always Sheikh Google that can be called upon to get the reference in the Quran. If you put whatever it is you're looking for and put in the Quran, 9 times out of 10, you will come up with something. Now, in this session, we're moving on, and this is now session 4. We're moving on to the fourth principle, which is a relevant hadith. This is the same as we did with the Quran. We try to find a hadith which is relevant to the subject at hand. So for a class on health and sleeping etiquette, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not lie in this manner, that's lying on your stomach, for it is a way of lying that Allah hates. Allah hates it. In other narrations, he said, don't lie on your stomach. This is displeasing to Allah, etc. The point of the matter is that it isn't healthy. And there's a huge body of information which has come up medically in the 80s, 90s, affirming that lying on the stomach is harmful. The cases of cot death, babies dying in their sleep, the common feature that they had was that most of them died while lying on their stomachs. So they advised people not to put the babies to sleep on the stomach. And they also showed that it affects the backbone, the spine, causes, this unnatural curvature of the spine. When people get old, they get hunched over. It's a result of lying on the stomach. And so there's a variety of different things that have been pointed out medically which show there's harm in it, something to be avoided. So when we're doing a class on health, that's something that can be brought up. You have a relevant hadith, which we mentioned. And again, if the hadith is long, covering a lot of different other issues, we just take the chunk of the hadith, just as we should take just the piece of the verse which is particularly relevant in the class. We don't need to bring the whole verse. If only 4 or 5 words are relevant to the idea we want to convey, then that's what we take. And again, the objective is for students to understand that the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has relevance in all aspects of our lives. There is guidance there. If it's been forbidden, we know it's harmful. If it's been permissible, we know that it's okay. If it's obligatory, we know this is something very good. We should try to do it. And if it's recommended, it's again something good. Not maybe on the same level as the obligatory, which you should do, as long as you're able to. Whereas recommended, it's recommended you do it. There's good in it also. And if it's disliked, know that there's some element of harm there. It's better to avoid it. And what has not been spoken on, that remains the neutral mubah, permissible. That area has been left. You can do it, not do it, no recommendations, etc. It's just there. You want to drink lemonade, or you want to drink orange juice, it's all permissible. It's up to you to choose what you like. Where we've got to find the hadith? Well, just as there was a concordance of the Quranic verses, there's also a concordance of the hadiths called Mu'jam al-Mufarras, the al-Fadl al-Hadith. Actually, Orientalists did it. People from Netherlands, some Orientalists from there, worked on it for many years. And it became a classic back in the 70s and before that. Even on into the 80s, it was the premier means of tracking down hadiths. It was a major work. But with the development of programming, etc., all of this has become available on discs. And then from there it went up on the internet. So now you can find the Mu'jam's contents on the internet. You can put in a hadith in Arabic and they'll give you all the sources. Sheikh Google will give you wherever it can be found. The major books have all been put up on the internet. So tracking hadith, relevant hadith down has been made quite simple. So again, in the classroom, you don't need to go into extensive discussion about the hadith unless it's talking on the exact topic that you are giving in more detail. It gives details concerning that particular topic. Otherwise, it's just enough for them to know there is something the Prophet ﷺ said in this context. And this is, you could say it is a subliminal message, just as the Quranic verse is subliminal. You know, we've given them the message and carried on with the class. We give them the hadith and we carry on with the class. And that's the way the works of the early scholars, when you see those Ibn al-Haytham and others who wrote on, you know, science, different elements of science, etc., you would see in the middle of their writings, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and Allah said, just, you know, relevant verses that touched on different aspects of whatever research they were doing. So this was the tradition, that this was all interwoven. You know, Quran and Sunnah had a place in all aspects of life, science, social, economic, etc. Moving on to the fifth principle. The fifth principle is the moral message. Giving a moral message. And this is perhaps the greatest of the principles, which we should never leave. Some of the others, maybe you can't find something from the Quran or the Hadith. You look, but you didn't find it. But a moral message you can always give. There's always room, there's always means to be able to give a moral message. And the moral message is so important that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had summed up the essence of Islam, saying, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent to perfect for you the highest, the most perfect of moral character traits. Morality. The essence of the Islamic message is one of morality. We, as the Muslim world, we cannot compete with the technology of the rest of the world today. Before, we were the leaders. They came and learned from us. That's history. But today, they're the leaders. We go and learn from them. So technology is not what we are noted for. What the Islamic civilization is most noted for is its firm morals. Its firm moral principles with regards to human beings' relationship with Allah. This is the first and most critical area of morality that needs to be established, that should be promoted whenever the opportunity presents itself. Our morality with regards to Allah. The most fundamental principle of that morality, the morality with regards to our relationship with Allah, is that we worship Him alone. He is one and uniquely one. Not one like which there are others, but a unique one. So to worship Him in His unique oneness, that is morally correct. To worship Him in duplicity, as a Trinity or a multiplicity, all of that is morally corrupt, morally wrong. Yes, we are encouraged to respect other religions, people's right to choose and to follow these other religions, but it doesn't make them morally right. To consider them to be morally right is morally wrong. So though we consider them to be morally wrong, we still respect their right to choose to follow their own religion or the religion of their choice. That's their right. La ikraha fi din, as Allah said, there's no compulsion in the religion. You can follow whichever religion you wish to follow. But in terms of what is morally right with regards to God, it is Islam. Worshipping Allah alone. Obeying the messengers of Allah with regards to Allah. How do we conceive of Allah? We should conceive of Him as the creator, sustainer of the universe, all-knowing, and all the perfect characteristics which are unique to Allah. And we don't give them to other human beings. So we don't pray to Hassan or Hussein or Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani or anybody else. We only worship Allah alone. So that's our relationship to Allah. Then, of course, we have to be morally correct in our relationship to our fellow human beings. We respect their right to live, to pursue happiness in a way which doesn't harm others. They shouldn't steal, though. You know, they shouldn't kill. They shouldn't rape. They shouldn't commit any of the well-known evils. Al-Munkar, that Allah speaks about. That it is morally correct to prevent the Munkar. To prevent it with our words, our deeds, or at least hate it in our hearts. We should be opposed to all false relationships, whether it's adultery or fornication or homosexuality, lesbianism, all the other incorrect, corrupt behavior, as well as cursing, lying, giving false witness, looking down at others, scorning them, etc., etc. All of that is morally wrong. So our lesson plans should reflect this moral stand that Islam holds. And of course, morality with regards to the world around us, in which we live, Allah has given us this world, is to look after it, not to destroy it, not to pollute the air and pollute the seas, and destroy the forests, and all the other, corruptions that are coming with today's civilization. We should oppose these violations of our duty to maintain this world in which we live, to look after it, to take care of it, to benefit from it, but to do so in a way which is not destructive. So we have this fifth principle, the moral message, which we should seek to introduce into every lesson plan, every class. We should not let a class go by, a lesson go by in which a moral message wasn't given. As much as it's humanly possible, we should do it. And you can imagine a school where students are given moral messages from kindergarten to grade 12. By the time they graduate, after 12 years, 13 years, 14 years of hearing that moral message in so many different ways, shapes, forms, That child who graduates at that stage is one whose sense of morality will be so strong and upright, he could never be corrupted. Nobody could get him to take a bribe, or nor would he give a bribe. And it's that kind of individual with whom we can change society. Without that moral foundation, that moral strength, then we really can't change the situation from what it was. So many schools which I visited all across the world, from Philippines to Guyana, South America. Whenever I ask the students of the Islamic schools, Islamic international schools, those graduating students of grade 12, grade 11, I would ask them time and time again, can you raise your hands? Or can any of you raise your hands and say, Wallahi, I never cheated on any examination or test? And invariably, either nobody raises their hands or only one or two individuals. This tells us that our schools are failures. Because if we give them the academics, we give them a strong academic foundation, but we've not given them Islamic morality or morality, then we have failed them and we've lost them. Because the modern approach to education is secular, seeking to produce workers for the industrial or social or socioeconomic system, each person playing his or her role in order to gain the material benefits, to live comfortably, have a nice life, etc., etc. This is the driving force. It's all about money. And of course, money doesn't bring happiness. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ had said, Ta'isa abdu dirham wa abdu dinar. The worshipper of the dirham and the dinar, the dollar and the pound, will always be wretched. Their lives will be wretched. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. So we need to instill this firm sense of morality in the minds and the hearts of the children. And we should work it into the class in such a way. It's not a class on ethics. We don't have a separate class. This is what some schools do. They give a class on ethics where you study about right and wrong. But then you have your other classes. No, it should be interwoven into every class. So the student doesn't feel this is like a separate subject. It's something which, okay, we have to take, our class in ethics. And you fall asleep in it, whatever, you're not connected. No, it should be so subtly woven into the fabric of the class that the students don't even realize it, that this message is being given. So when we choose the values that we're going to work on, of course, they should be those appropriate to the age level, mental level of the students that we're dealing with. They don't give them moral issues that are complex, which are, for adults. Nor do we give adults moral issues which are for children, which are not relevant. And the overall objective is to bring morality back into the classroom. There are a number of books that have been written, like the book, Can We Teach Children to Be Good? And of course, Sheikh Google can give you many, many other authors who have written on changing morality. So we should avail ourselves, and of course, child psychologists are very, very helpful. They have studied the issues that children face at the different stages of their development, and they can easily give us the most important issues that we need to focus on when weaving morality into the classroom, bringing it back. It's been taken out with the secularization of education, and we have the challenge of bringing it back. So that's the fifth principle, an example of that from the Al-Fajr International School in Chennai, India. In one of their lesson plans on English, they had a fairy tale, The Lion and the Mouse. It was a reading comprehension objective. So, of course, the story of the lion and the mouse, you know, it's one of the fables, fairy tale, of a lion saving a mouse, and then a mouse saying, well, you know, if I get the chance to save you, I'll save you. And of course, the lion scoffs. Yeah, it's not too likely that that's ever going to happen. How can you help me? How can you save me? So anyway, the point is this dialogue which takes place between the two and the subsequent circumstance in which the mouse was able to help the lion. In that story, I mean, of course, we need to clarify to the students that animals don't talk to each other. They may talk amongst themselves, but this is just a fairy tale. We don't promote Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, you know, we don't support these things. These are fables, they're lies, they're fake, they're not true. It's morally wrong to raise children on fables and lies. However, at the same time, we do explain to them that Prophet Sulaiman was able to understand the language of the animals, the ants, the birds, etc. And we let them know this is fact. This is different from Aesop's fables made up by somebody. This is a fact which has come to us by revelation from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we believe it because of who it came from, who brought it to us. And then in terms of the moral message, you know, of course, it's morally correct to tell the truth. The students should not be deceived. So that's part of the moral message there in the story that should be clarified. So they're not deceived. But instead, in the story, we focus on the mercy of Prophet Sulaiman in his dealing with the ants, and further the issue, the error of the lion, who thought that there was no way that the mouse would help him, because he saw him as being helpless, small, etc. But he turns out to help him. There's a moral message there about not looking down at others. No matter how lowly you might think somebody is, incapable of doing anything, without influence, without power. In spite of all of that, that person may be better than you, may be stronger than you, may be more capable than you. So don't look down at others. That's a moral message which is conveyed in that story. So when we're dealing with a story like that, Lion and the Mouse, we look for the moral message which the students need to grasp, and we help them to understand that. So that basically concludes our first session, in which we have now looked at the first session of today, but you know, in continuation from our previous weekend, we have now covered the 5 principles. So what we'll be looking at in the next session will be a number of lesson plans which were sent in to me, which I worked with some schools, mostly from the lower grades, but the principles, as we go through them, I'm sure you'll see how to do it with the upper grades also, because really it's applicable on any grade level. In fact, it's more so on the higher grades. And we hope that you will, those of you that are attending this session, will participate with us in the effort to compile a library, a resource center for lesson plans for the various subjects covered in the various classes, to help schools around the world in the process or in the effort to Islamize their schools, universities, whatever, because the principles we're talking about are applicable on all levels. It's not just K to 12. It's also applicable in the bachelor's level as well as in the master's level and the PhD. That is, Islamic institutions, we should have these principles enshrined in our preparations as professors in universities, etc. We're conscious of the need, the requirement to present our various disciplines in a way which is in keeping with Islamic teachings, and thereby making it pleasing to Allah and ensuring that it's recorded as ibadah for us if we have in fact the right intentions. Let me take a few questions. That I've seen here. Okay, what I can see. In light of what you've said about morality being instilled into our Islamic schools, do you think we should first educate the adults in our society and also at the same time educate our children to instill these values of Islam before teaching the children the theology of Islam? No, I don't think there's a before here in this matter. It's an ongoing, simultaneous job. We do both. Trying to promote morality on all levels of society is a requirement of us, for us. But because we're talking about lesson plan Islamization, I mean, this is the role of the teacher to bring that morality back into the classroom. It's the role of the parents to ensure that morality exists at home. It's the role of those who govern the society to ensure that it also exists in the society as a whole. So I wouldn't want to say that we have to do this before we teach the theology. No, the oneness of Allah, that He alone be worshipped. We don't have to wait until we have taught people morality. That is morality we're teaching right there anyway. That is morality. Okay, next question. We can take a few more before starting. We need individuals who have knowledge of Quran and Hadith and are also specialists in their subjects such as English science. No, of course it is better. That's the better situation where our teachers who are specialists in their various subjects have good knowledge of Quran and Hadith. But even without quote-unquote good knowledge, if we have some knowledge, we know where to research, where to get the information, then that is that is sufficient to be engaged in this process, because it's a process, an ongoing process. So we don't insist that we have to have perfection here in this matter. No. We encourage our teachers, the teachers in the International Islamic School should be taking courses in Islam, upgrading their Islamic knowledge so that they can be able to teach more effectively. I mean, that is a fact that goes without saying. Further question? Is it appropriate to have Christian teachers teach our children in Muslim schools in the Middle East? Should we have Christian teachers teaching our children in any school, in any Islamic school, in any school of Muslims? No, not really. We may have a few in certain subjects, where Muslims dominate and they are just a few, their influence is minimized. This could be a means of dawah for them if we find them to be people who are very much accommodating, respectful to our cultural traditions, etc., etc. But just to hire them simply because they have academic, skills and background and experience, and to put them in this situation and they become the majority, they're the principal of the school, and these kind of things that's happened in many schools. This is a mistake. This is harmful. It's going to be harmful. But we don't write them off altogether, because we have a duty for dawah. So where there's an opportunity, we may bring some in, but of course we should have them respect our customs of dress and behavior, etc., etc. Further question? Some of us who are not teachers in any school with potential, inshallah, how should we utilize these to help the Muslim Ummah? Well, I would just say that, you can advise the teachers in the school that your children go to. Advise your Muslim professors if they're in Muslim institutions, etc. That they should have these considerations and they should present whatever they're presenting, from an Islamic perspective. So it's just a matter of commanding the good and prohibiting the evil, encouraging others to share in this endeavor to Islamize our educational systems. Further question? How would you advise balancing Islamic education with government interference in non-Islamic countries where they might oppose Islamic priorities? Well, every circumstance has its own solutions. So we just look for those solutions and inshallah we'll find them. We do as much as we can. What we can't do, then we have to be patient. We ask Allah to make a way, and we keep on striving to the best degree that we can. Ittaqullah mastata'tum. So we're told we fear Allah as much as we can. So if you find that your children are suffering as a result of government interference, etc., your children being exposed to non-Islamic bad practices, harmful practices, morally corrupt practices, then that's time for you to make hijrah, to move from where you are to somewhere else where you can more properly practice your way of life, Islam. Okay, we'll take this as the last question and we'll move on to some more of our next session, which is that of a practical look at some of the lesson plans and how people try to Islamize them and how I followed through, what suggestions could be made. Okay, what is the best approach to teach students about morality between genders without parents getting upset about it? Morality between genders. Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, if you're talking about sex education, I don't know why parents would be upset if it's being done properly from a respectful and Islamic perspective. But so I'm not really clear exactly what the question is referring to. Morality between genders, male, female, or among males, among females, homosexuality, lesbianism, these kinds of things. It's not really clear, and the best approach is going to vary according to the age level that you're dealing with, the cultural background of the children, the societies, a lot of factors that should be kept in mind when tackling sensitive subjects.